Fully custom explosions in Minecraft are not possible with commands. That's the sad truth. You can do things like summon primed creepers or primed TNT, but that's really about it. There's essentially no customizability with these explosions. They're pretty much hard-coded. However, all the way back in Minecraft 1.21, Mojang added a way to make custom explosions using a method other than commands, and that was with custom enchantments. Custom enchantments can do a lot of things, and one of those things is this action called Explode. And when this was added to the game, the Datapack community kind of went crazy. I mean, there's so many different things here that you can customize entirely within the JSON file. If you're somehow able to trigger an enchantment to do something, you can make it cause an explosion that may or may not be attributed to the user, can have any damage type, or just omit the damage field to do no damage at all, specify blocks that are immune, specify knockback, give it a radius, create fire, tell it to do all these different block interactions, display particles and sounds. Long story short, this was a crazy addition. And as Datapack developers, if we wanted to harness this new functionality, well, all it came down to was just finding a way to use commands to somehow trigger a custom enchantment that had whatever explosion we wanted. So is it possible to do this? Well, yes. It absolutely is. Here is an example of a custom enchantment that is really easy to trigger in this way. This enchantment has a tick trigger. Now what that means is if an entity has that enchantment on an item in the correct slot, then whatever effect is specified inside the tick trigger will run. And in this case, that effect is a custom explosion. I've decided to just make a large wind burst, so I've given it, some really high knockback, some high radius. I'm trying to recreate the typical wind burst except a lot bigger. So the approach here is that I'm going to summon an armor stand that has an item with this enchantment on it. Now I've specifically chosen the armor stand's feet because if I put an item that is not boots in the armor stand's feet slot, then that item won't render. And if I'm trying to make a custom enchantment, we're not going to want to see the armor stand or any of the items it's holding, so that's why I'm doing that. Okay, so I summon an armor stand. It has an item in its feet slot that has this enchantment on it. The enchantment waits for the next tick, then summons the explosion, and then runs a function, and the function just kills the armor stand. Now if I was writing a Datapack and actually doing this for real, then all that function would do is just kill the armor stand, but for this video specifically, I've also told it to say hi first. So whenever I summon that armor stand, it's going to say hi and then it will die. Okay, so let's go ahead and try that. I've made a function right here that does exactly that. It's just going to summon the armor stand, and then on its feet it has an item, which I've decided to be a brick, and then that brick has this enchantment on it, which I've called Large Wind Burst Tick, because it responds to the tick trigger. So if I just go ahead and run that function, and I've shifted it by 5 blocks in the Z direction so I can actually kind of aim my camera at it and see it from afar, well, we'll see that the armor stand gets spawned. I don't know if you'll be able to see this in the video, but in my game I saw an armor stand appear very, very quickly, and then it caused that big wind burst. And then here you can also see that the armor stand said hi because it called that function that then killed it. I'll go to survival mode and then do it again without shifting the position at all. So if I do that, it actually launches me up into the air like a wind burst should. And oh boy, I forgot to turn off fall damage. That's a lot of fun. So anyway, that's about all there is to it, right? I mean, I currently have a command that can summon my custom explosion whenever I want. That's pretty awesome. And a lot of Datapack developers do exactly this. However, while this method does work great in most scenarios, there's one little thing about it that's just not quite perfect. And it has to do with the fact that we're using this tick trigger. Now the tick trigger runs once every tick, which means there can be up to 1 tick of delay between the function executing and the explosion actually happening. And in particular, if you're in the middle of a function with more commands coming after that, well basically if I were to have more commands here and here and here and here, what would happen is that I summon the armor stand, the rest of these commands run, and then finally the explosion happens because the explosion was waiting for the next tick to trigger. I know this is a really niche complaint, but sometimes this is genuinely a huge concern. Well, fortunately, the Datapack community has hinted at a way around this. And to show that off, I've gone ahead and defined another enchantment that's almost exactly the same, but this time the only difference is that instead of tick, we're going to be using the trigger called Location Changed. Now for those who aren't aware, Location Changed is an enchantment trigger that runs runs every time the enchanted entity moves to a new block position. So if I change the block I'm in, as in my integer XYZ coordinates go up or down, then location changed will be triggered. Now what a lot of people might not know is that location changed also triggers as soon as the enchanted item is equipped, and that includes when an entity is summoned with that enchanted item. To spell it out more clearly, location changed will trigger as soon as the armor stand gets summoned. It doesn't have all this business of waiting for the next tick like the tick trigger does. So this should be the solution to all our problems, right? If we just use location changed instead of tick, then we'll get an actual immediate explosion. And you might be looking up at the top and seeing the no checks that I added to the name of this file. I'll get into why I named it that in just a little bit, but first I just want to show off what this actually does. So this time, rather than the tick function, I'm again going to summon it 5 blocks away, and I'm going to summon the no checks function. And if we can see right there, it causes a little wind burst. But there may be a problem that you've noticed down in the lower left side of the screen. The armor stand actually said hi twice, and that is exactly why I added that hi statement in the first place. When you use location changed, for some reason, when the entity gets equipped with the enchanted item, or when the entity gets summoned with the enchanted item, the location change trigger runs twice. Now you may have even thought that because it will kill the armor stand the first time, well, that might stop it from running the second time, right? Well, no, even if the armor stand is already dead, that doesn't stop the enchantment trigger from running again. The upshot of that is that if I summon this armor stand on top of myself, I'll be launched way higher than I was last time, because it literally summoned 2 explosions, both of which applied knockback to me. Okay, so now we've got these 2 options, and we've got a bit of a dilemma. Do we use tick, or do we use location changed? If we use tick, we might have to wait for up to a tick before the explosion actually happens, but if we use location changed, well, it does run immediately, it runs too many times. So what do we choose? Or do we even have to choose? Foreshadowing. Now, if you're really technically savvy and you're thinking about this a lot, you might be screaming at your screen right now, but Conyer, we can just obviously get around that double trigger by having the function add a tag, and then we check for that tag or something along those lines. Basically, we give the enchantment a predicate that checks for something that the function can then toggle, right? And I think this is what a lot of people currently do. I think I've seen people talking in Discord servers about this, but the reason I decided to even make this video in the first place is because I have found a solution to this that completely blows that out of the water. It's so much more efficient. I'm so excited to show it to you. I'm going to show it to you. The following is my actual implementation for just summoning a large wind burst. Now, it looks almost the same as the no checks version, but as you can see, unlike in no checks, I've added a check. Under the requirements field, you can always specify a predicate, and I've decided to make use of this very underrated and very poorly understood predicate called enchantment active check. And this is all I did. I didn't edit the function at all. I didn't edit anything about the armor stand's NBT. All I did was add this one little simple predicate. And as you can see, if I actually run that function, which is just large wind burst on its own, well then, I'll get a single wind burst. I meant to summon that far away, but I summoned it on myself. You saw I didn't get launched as high that time. The armor stand only said hi once, and because I was using location changed, it was immediate. So why exactly does this work? Well, let me explain. Enchantment active check is this strange little predicate that, first of all, can only be called in this exact context. It can only be called from a location changed enchantment. If you try to just make a predicate file using enchantment active check, that predicate will return false every single time because it has the wrong context. The context it needs is only provided by location changed. Now here's what it actually does. It basically asks, okay, for a location changed enchantment, last time this enchantment ran, did it work? That's what it's asking. And then it's got this additional field called active, which you can set to true or false, right? If you set it to true, that's how you spell true, then this requirement will say, okay, this location changed effect can only run if it managed to run last time, right? Whatever last time means. Last time is, whatever the last time was that this particular trigger got triggered. If it managed to run last time, then enchantment active check true will say, okay, it can run again. And if for whatever reason it didn't run last time, then enchantment active check true will say, okay, it can't run this time. Now, as you may have guessed, false inverts that, right? So with this false, if this effect managed to run last time, whatever last time may be, then this condition will return false and make it so it can't run this time. Whereas if it didn't run last time, this enchantment will say, okay, it didn't run last time, therefore it can run this time. If this is the only predicate, which it is in this case, it basically acts like an alternator. First it'll work, and then it won't, and then it will, and then it won't, and so on and so forth. The first time this trigger runs is the first time it has ever run, which is right when the entity gets summoned, which means there was no last time. And so according to Enchantment Active Check, because there was no last time, that's the same as it didn't work last time. Therefore, it lets it run this time. But like I said, Location Changed tries to run twice. So the second time it runs, the Enchantment Active Check checks last time, which was the first time it ran, and say, oh, it worked last time, therefore it won't work this time. And that is how you transition from 2 explosions down to 1, using only one simple predicate. So in summary, we now have a way to make any custom explosion that you can trigger on demand using a single command. You can customize this explosion however you want. You can make it create fire, like I said. You can do a different thing with blocks. You can give it more or less knockback, more or less radius, whatever. You can give it damage. It's super customizable. If you do that explosion, and then immediately followed by this function that kills the armor stand and maybe doesn't say hi, and then you include this predicate, well, you'll have an instant explosion that only triggers once. As far as actually summoning it with a command, you're just going to want to summon an armor stand that has that enchantment on an item on its feet. You may also want to make the armor stand invisible, just so the armor stand doesn't flash for a second. That's probably a good idea. And that's Custom Explosions. Thank you so much for watching. I have been Conyer. I will see you later, my dudes.